right, watercolor class. This is part 1 of the Rottweiler puppy. Now, I sent this to you guys, and my printer obviously ran out of yellow, right there. So we're going to put these same colors into this area of the puppy as well. You can pull that up on your phone or, your iPad or something, just opening your emails, and you'll get a better picture of that. But in the background here, it's not this purpley tone. I don't know if you can see these stripes, but it's definitely this greenish look and stuff. But you can make your background whatever color that you would like to do it. But the first thing you do is print off your picture, transfer your drawing or draw him off. I drew mine off. I think I made the mouth a little too deep, but it's going to work. The first thing we're going to do is, we start off with the lightest colors. So in him, we're going to put in some of these golden tones and some of the grays and some of the lighter areas before we come back in with the absolute black. So, and we're just doing the large washes right now. So, I'm going to use a little bit larger brush. And we're going to mix this up some gray. And I'm just going to take this gray that we used on the last one. I guess it was part of the background of the lizard. And that's going to be my gray tone. And I'm going to get some of the golden yellow. And I really need to clean out a space because none of this is going to be usable space here. So that's something for preparation that we need to do. Prepare us a space. And you can also mix your different colors on the foam plates and just mix those colors, and you can stack them upside down once they dry, obviously. Stack them upside down so that you don't run out of a specific color you've mixed for until you're finished with the project, so you have plenty of that color. Or even if you start to run out, you've got a little bit of that color that you can match it to. So that's always a good thing. Now I've got my yellow here, but you'll notice that this is kind of a cinnamon warm color. So we're going to come over and get a little bit of the brown and mix with that. And we've got a golden ochre color, right? That's like our golden ochre. And so that's going to have this is not sienna brown, this is umber. So to make this more of a sienna, we're going to have to add a red. Now you don't want to add the pinky reds, so that's your ones on the ends. You're going to want to add a little bit of your the red that is a little more orange, right? So now you're getting into your sienna colors. And you just keep mixing until you're happy with that color. And you make your own sienna brown color. You can always test it on your picture to see if that is the color that you want. That's a good color. It does look darker on here, but all you got to do when you have a color that you like in watercolor and you want to make it lighter, you're not going to add white because it's watercolor. So we're going to just add a little bit of water to it, and it's going to be a perfect color. I'm going to get rid of that brush, and I'm going to add a little bit of water. My table's slanted a little bit, so I'm going to add the water down towards this end, and this is going to be my lighter color. I'd rather you put in a couple of coats than to jump in with something too dark and have to do lift-offs. So we're going to just kind of put in using our little hair strokes into the lighter parts of his fur. Make sure you're going in the direction of the fur. It starts going really flat out here. And this is just kind of, getting rid of the white of the paper at this point. And inside these different colors at different spots, you can add different colors. So instead of it just being one color, you might want to come in and add just a little bit of red, or like in this area, you could definitely add some more brown here, brown around the outer edge. It's not absolute black. You know, play around with your colors until you get it exactly the color you want it to be. And remember that watercolor dries lighter. So always be mindful of that. And I'm just going to put this first color in. Goes all the way around this muzzle. There's a black line right about in here, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that. And his whiskers are black. Yay! So we don't have to skip over the white whiskers, so that kind of makes it nice. This is definitely a golden brown color for his face. I hope you guys are having fun doing these art projects. I haven't gotten too many of the watercolor class to send me their pictures. I've seen a bunch of the drawing or calligraphy. I've seen quite a few calligraphy. If you want to, in some areas, you can actually come back in and add a little bit more yellow or lighter color that you would see in, you know, just this lighter area up around his face. And then we're going to jump to the other side. But like I said, you could always add in let's go over here, a little bit of brown while it's still wet. You know, just kind of drop in some of that brown. Get a nice wash going. It's actually very dark brown down along the bottom. Could add a little bit of black if you want. I'm not going to jump to a black for this piece. In the brown areas, I'm going to stay with the brown, and just darken it. Even if I use so this area is pretty clean. I'm just gonna clean that out. Remind you guys how to get that super dark brown. Get a smaller brush. You're going to get your ultramarine blue, and bring it out. Get as much of it out of your brush as you can. And then you're going to get your dark brown. And this gives you that super dark. Even darker than burnt umber. Or raw umber. So, you know, if you wanted to put in some of those super dark tones, then it's going to look like that. So, just to show you, remind you of how to make your browns darker, just add your blues. So I am going to leave this as and go on to the other side. I'm just going to make that a little bit lighter. This goes up, this comes off of the nose and comes down around here, but it is textured, so we're just going to tap. Get some texture going there. because he's hairy. And those are the little lines that the whiskers come out of. And I don't know what they're called, but anyway. So let's just go on to this side over here. And this side goes all the way down the face. So the hair marks go down this way, and then they turn back up and stick out over here. Now this is where I don't have any yellow in my printer, so I need to still make it this color, but it's brighter on the outside, just like it's a little bit brighter over here. So we're gonna add just a little bit more yellow to our mixture whenever we get all over to that side. And remember, you're gonna paint some darker on top. You know, the little dark hairs going on top and stuff like that, but you still want all of your strokes to go in the direction that the fur would be growing. So here it's actually going down. And here it's going more out, and then it's going out this way. So that's just, get yourself in the habit of doing the strokes in the direction that you see the fur going. These are going down. I don't normally use a lot of, leave a lot of white, but every once in a while I like to do that. And then at the end I'll glaze it with like a yellow, and it makes it look like little glowing golden hairs, you know. So, oh, I just touched some green. Where did that green come from? Let's try again. I'm gonna turn my board just because it's easier for my hand to pull than it is to go sideways. Drop the picture. So it's just little short strokes, guys. Don't go long. Don't try to hurry up this process, or it'll go really flat on you. I have to make some more. And out here is where it's a little bit lighter, so I may add a little extra yellow. Very dark. I have a lot mixed in my brush. This is a wet into dry technique. It's not dry brushing, because the paint is nice and juicy, and you don't want to have too much you know, super thick paint right at the beginning. So we're going to add our darks in there. This whole area is a little bit darker. Just put on a little second coat. More of those little layers that you see coming through, the better it's going to look. And then get a little bit more of the dark brown. There we go. And do the same little, this little arc thing on the other side. I'm just going to make some more little hairs in there just because it needs it. This little arc right here, it's a really dark brown, and it comes right off the side of the nose, like right in here. So I'm just going to kind of put that in just to indicate where that's going to be. I'm going to take and add a little bit of gold to that, and add in where my little lines of where the whiskers would be. This one's way at the very bottom. And then you can add your blackish brown, and that's up underneath the nostril along that line. That line's actually going to be black, or I could do it this dark and just marry these two colors, two pieces together, just so I know where it is. And this whole area is kind of dark, but it's just little tiny strokes. Don't just fill it in, guys. It's it looks so much better to have all the little strokes on top. You're just kind of building up all these little layers of hair, right? So you can actually let each layer perfectly dry, and then come back in and do these strokes, or you can just kind of, you know, as it's drying, you know, drop some in and just keep building up and building up because you want all of these thick layers to look like there's some black hairs, there's some brown hairs, there's some light hairs. You can see it better on this side, but because that particular picture shows them white. Now, the hairs on the arm are also that same color coming out from underneath this these whiskers. They're pretty dark. And then they're going to go with the golden color right up underneath. I think I'm going to put the golden color first and then come back with the dark on top. And then you can have some go backwards into that space. This is the toe, actually. So the hair is coming down the foot. Let's keep building up. The foot comes all the way, the back actually comes all the way down to here, and the foot is ending here. So we're just gonna make our directional marks to make his arm look, you know, rounded, and then bring some of the hair down into the foot. This is like a black space between the two paws, so I'm just going to tell myself where that is by dropping in this darker color. Needs a little water to it. That is our umber mixed with ultramarine to get it darker. And then the outsides of the toenail is also the darker color. because there's a little highlight on the sides. So I'm going to put that toenail in the darker on both sides. I'm going to leave that white there because that's going to end up being, you know, gray. And do the darker toe nails. This one's kind of going that direction. And it's right there. And it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. These are the pads. So those are going to end up being black on the bottom of the foot that's showing. And this is gray. I mean brown on the other side of the toenail. Right there. Okay, so we started to get our paw and our face. And I need to do the other little gold kind of eyebrow area. Just a little bit of brown. Clean it off. A little bit of gold. And we're going to put that in. I'm going to add a little more gold to this side just because I think it got a little too red. And I can always add a little sienna color to the other side as well. Well, it's still a little too wet. Take a touch out, pick up some sienna. Make it a little bit redder. Okay, now we're going to mix up our grays, and I use the same thing with the that I did the dark with. This is a little bit of ultramarine blue with a little bit of the burnt umber, and then I've watered it down quite a bit. So some of these lines in the center here are a little darker than the other. So if your drawing is pretty dark, you're going to want to get rid of those. Now around this eye, it's absolutely black, so that's not going to be a big problem or anything. So you know, we don't have to worry about it. We're going to come in with our gray, and that's going to be the top part, the kind of shinier part of the nose. And underneath the nostrils, there is a little bit of a light, but it's not white. And so we're going to put that gray in. Hopefully you can see those little strays. There's a little bit on this side, so I'm going to need to take out some of that brown, but I don't want to do it now while it's wet. So we're going to put in that lighter gray going all the way across. And it's darker. Oops, sorry. It's darker on this side. So I'm going to push some of that paint to dry more towards that side. And then right here in the center, you're going to go up a little ways as it's absolute black. And then up in here, where it's starting to come up the nose, it's hitting the light. So we're going to put in some of these little gray marks. You can pull them down, or you can fling them up, whatever fits better for your hand. Me being right-handed, I like to fling away, but sometimes that can leave dark at the tip, so just push that color back down towards the base of those highlights or whatever, or you could just tap them out. You know, it's going to dry so much lighter kind of anyway. So some of these are longer than others. Seems like I'm casting quite a shadow on here, so I'm gonna go the other direction, but the lines tend to get fatter if I don't fling, so be mindful of that. Up here on the top of his head, he's gonna have a shine as well, so I'm just kind of telling myself where I want that to be, and it's gonna be really dark in between the eyes because it goes in, his face goes inward, so we're gonna want to do that. There is gray around the eyes, which I'm running out of paint. There's a little bit of gray underneath the eyes. That might be a little dark. There is a little bit right in here, but we're going to put the black on top. There's a little bit in this area around the top of the eye is a grayed hair. Just anywhere you see those grays, they're just highlights of the black is what they are. They're just the shiny black coat where it hits the light hits it. So we're going to put a little bit of gray there, and then we're going to blend the black into it. There's a little gray on the outside, so it's definitely needs the hair stroke to show that outer edge. Grays up into these little flings. These may be a little dark for watercolor, so just soften your pencil lines before you start. Make sure your eraser is clean because you can actually just sit there and smear your pencil on your watercolor if you don't keep your eraser clean. Just rub it on the hard surface of your workspace or whatever that you're using. This side must be the lighter side, and I'm just going to kind of brush in some kind of dry brushing a highlight on this side, and I'm going to soften the edge because I don't want it to be I'm going to be putting some black into there too, so I don't want a harsh edge. And then there's a little highlight on the top of the head there, the little fluffy parts of the ear, and right here in the front of the ear. Let's soften those internal edges. Okay, we're starting to build up our dog, and I need this to kind of dry before I start putting in the blacks and whatnot. So for this week's project, we're going to be just kind of blocking in. So let's go ahead and put in the background, and this little area here. And this background in the picture is kind of this greenish color. But you can choose whatever colors you want. You probably don't want to choose one of these browns. You probably don't want to choose something like neonish or whatever, you know, and work from one section to the next section to the next section so that you don't wet your paper and then it's dry by the time you get back to it. So I'm going to pick a little bit of the sap green. Just to kind of go with the colors that are there. I'm going to pick up some of this golden color that we used in the dog. I'm sorry, not showing you the palette. Now I've gotten green and this gold. And I'm just going to drop that color in. You know, whatever he happens to be laying on. As he is laying down, you can see some of his legs over on this side. You can make it whatever you'd like. And I like this kind of out of focus modeled look, and so I always wet the space and then just drop paint in and let it dry as it's going to do that. So let's see, right here along the face, line goes out, it's about right there. And then underneath the chin, I'm going to go ahead and do this section. And might add a little bit of the blue to it. I like that. I'm going to add a little of that to the top too. Since it's still wet, I can. And, you know, dropping in different colors and letting them bleed together and stuff just makes for a really interesting kind of background. Come up next to that face. Here's his chin. And I'm just mixing some of these different colors. Get something interesting going on in the background without having to paint a background. Just kind of a something he's lying on. Wait. This needs to be brown as well. Yep. So I need to put some of that brown color there. So I'm not going to put too much background there. Now before this one dries, I'm going to add a little bit of water. Don't let it be soaking wet running into this space unless that space is soaking wet. And otherwise you'll end up with a hard line right there. And we don't want that. And this is a shadow of the dog going over here. So we're going to pick up some of that green, tap it right next to his little hairs on his face. Once this dries, we can always go back in and add a little bit more and pick up some browns and some gold. We're also going to cast a shadow underneath these paws. So, you know, this is just a like holding the place, whatever you want to call that. Little hairs around his paw. Let's pick up some of this blue. I like that. Kind of grate it a little bit. This is still very wet. If I want to actually just come in and add a little blue. It's just blue on my dirty brush, so you can do that. I don't know if y'all noticed this particular time I took tape, and you can take your tape and wrap it around itself to where it sticks to itself like this, and you make this little tube and you stick it on the back of your paper so that the back of the so that you can paint it all the way to the edges, and that just, it doesn't leave that little white line around that, you know, we kind of tend to enjoy. It looks like it's got a little mat around it or something, but we do like to paint all the way to the edges. When I had I didn't want to paint smaller than this. I should have just blown it up and drawn a really big one, but this is a half sheet of the watercolor paper that we normally have in the classroom, and trying to create a little bit of distance with this background, and in doing so, you know, we apply even what we learned in landscape to this so that it's darker and stuff, and it gets lighter as it goes in the background. So we're going to jump back over to some of these paler greens up here, and just kind of dropping some of that in. You might pick up a little bit of the golden color, dapple it in, just to have a little something besides just green. I don't usually like a single color in there. And then as it comes forward, you can start adding in some of those darker tones and stuff. So we're going to add in a little bit of the goldish color and start adding in some of these darker ones. Let's see. Since this color was down underneath a little bit, I'm going to start off with it and blend it into the upper colors. And then pick up that golden color and drop a little bit of it in. It's golden with the green mixed into it. And then you can add just the green. You just want it darker as it comes closer. So we've got this background going, and we are going to need to let this dry. We can't do any of the black next to all the brown that was wet, and we can't do any of the details and anything that we want to do like on the foot or something like that until those browns dry. And you can see the paper is kind of pushed up and stuff. That means that's still a little bit wet, even though we were kind of dry brushing, but there's definitely a lot of lift where the fresh water is on here. So we've got it drawn off, printed out, got it drawn off, did our background, and started in with our browns, making every stroke go in the direction of the fur. Let's put in our little highlight and stuff on his nose and the other grays that you see in the picture. And then we're going to come back and finish up all the blacks and all the little tiny details, especially in his eyes and stuff like that, which are really pretty. And we'll do that for the next lesson. So let's get ready for the blacks and get this dried off. Thanks a lot.